Hello everyone, glad to see you're back. I'm continuing the series of pregnancy videos that my wife and I are doing. This week we are on week 7. Very excited, everything's going fairly well so far. And well, to make, too long didn't watch summary at the beginning of this video, everything seems to be continuing as normal. Not too much changes from the prior weeks. What we have noticed though is that her appetite is starting to decrease slightly. She's not eating as much as she used to when we first found out that we were pregnant, and her desire to eat has definitely decreased. She's having to sometimes, put in a little bit of extra effort to eat dinner if it's a night where she's especially not hungry. Oh, and her nausea has started to spike a little bit, where she's definitely starting to feel that morning sickness. No puking yet, and my wife is resisting as much as she can because she hates puking. I can't blame her, honestly. I really can't. And I know that's a normal symptom of pregnancy, the morning sickness, the vomiting in the morning. So if it ever does happen, I'll understand that's a normal process of things, but yeah, I can't exactly say I blame her for not wanting to go through such experiences. But like I said in our last video, we are finally having kids, so she's more than happy to throw up if it's part of the pregnancy process, but she would kind of prefer to avoid that if at all possible. Other than that, everything seems to be going fairly well. It's mostly just continuing to wait for her to get farther along in the first trimester before our first doctor's visit, but we are definitely making sure that everything is going fairly well. And one of our biggest worries right now that we're in week 7 is fear of miscarriage. So small kind of like secret, something that we've not told very many people, is this is actually not our first attempt at having a child. This is actually going to technically be pregnancy number 2. We actually succeeded in getting pregnant about 9 to 10 months before I started these videos. And, well, it was unfortunately very short-lived. We barely found out that we were pregnant ourselves, and by the time we found out that we had a miscarriage. So we weren't even to tell close friends and family that we were pregnant for the first time before we miscarried. And it actually happened at about week 7, which is why we're both extremely nervous right now. We don't know why the miscarriage happened, and it was just a terrible experience, and it's not something that either of us want to go through again. I figured I would talk a little bit about that experience to, since there's not much else going on this week. It was hard, even for me, going through the man's perspective, it was tough. When we found out that we were pregnant the first time, it was actually through blood testing. We had gone with some doctors to start a medical intervention to get pregnant. And as they were doing the testing, they called back one day and said, "Hey, what's the hormone? HCG, I think it is." Yeah, I'm totally a man not knowing what's going on. Anyway, they called back and said, "Your HCG hormone levels are rather high, indicating pregnancy." And so they wanted us to come in to do an ultrasound, and we thought, what? So we got pregnant? I mean, they were just starting to do like diagnostic work to see where they should try to do the medical intervention, and trying to figure that out. They found out that we were pregnant. We went in so that they could do an ultrasound to check, and when they did that ultrasound, they actually, the day before that ultrasound, actually, my wife started to have some pretty severe cramps and some bleeding. It started out as just light spotting, but it started to slowly get heavier. And that was kind of concerning, but we went into the doctor next day, figured that we would just ask about it. It was fairly recent, so, didn't think it'd be too concerning. But the ultrasound confirmed that the baby was in the process of being expelled from her body. She was actually going through a miscarriage by the time we found out that we were pregnant. And it felt like such a slap to the face from nature, like, "Hey, you're pregnant, psych!" And so it was depressing, I'll be honest. And it hurt my wife a lot, not just physically but emotionally, that we had been trying for so long and got pregnant and nope, we lost it. And it really hurt her, There were countless nights of crying, that's for sure. And, as trying to be the man of the house, be a strong husband, I tried to hold a straight face, but everything will be fine. We'll just try again once the miscarriage process is over, So I try to maintain a straight, optimistic look, but inside I was hurt too. It wasn't easy. The hardest thing I would say I've ever had to do as a husband is watch my wife cry and cry herself to sleep. And it's not easy to wake up in the middle of the night to find out that she's had nightmares with this and is just sobbing, trying to find comfort. And at the time I had a job that I would wake up early in the morning and I would have to leave at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning to get to work. And if it was one of those nights where I woke up and just before I was about to leave found out that she was trying to cry herself back to sleep, it was definitely one of those days where I did not want to go to work. I'd rather stay home and try to help her through it. And of course I knew there was nothing I could do, nothing too much at least. I could try to hug her and comfort her, but it's not a flesh wound that you just put a Band-Aid on and say, oh, it'll heal itself. It's much deeper and it hurts, and I myself, I don't feel like I was too overwhelmed with the miscarriage, but I've never had to watch my wife cry so much, and it affected me as well, that's for sure. I know there were times where I got depressed about the miscarriage and the pain she was going through, and trying to hold straight face, my optimistic attitude, I would try to avoid crying in her sight. Of course, she eventually would find, she would sometimes come home from school and I'd be just overcome with emotion. I myself was crying and I felt bad. She's the one that's most hurt, going through all the pain, especially as her body's ripping itself apart in the miscarriage process, and here she was having to comfort me in the process, but well, we eventually worked through it, and it was tough. She started to lose hope that we would ever have kids after that, and I started to lose a bit of hope as well. We were really hoping that we wouldn't have to go through all that medical intervention, and like I said, we had hopes of having at least 4 kids, and the very first shot ends in miscarriage. That's not very doesn't inspire a lot of hope. So we didn't know what was going to happen. We really didn't. But fortunately, we were able to get through it. We had help from family and from friends that have been through similar issues, and we found lots of comfort in that. And it was definitely a time where we both grew together, immensely. As painful as it was, there was a lot of bonding that came from it, for which I'm very grateful. Definitely would not want anyone to go through such an experience, but my wife and I made the best of it, and we definitely came a lot closer together as husband and wife because of it. Well, but fortunately now we are pregnant again, and so hopefully all those pains can be overridden and we can continue to move on with life and have that hope that we can reach our ideal family size. But we are definitely, because of that past experience, we were both extremely nervous of anything that goes on. This is the time where she also starts to feel lots of cramps, just because the baby is starting to grow at a really rapid rate, and her womb is expanding, the rest of her body aches as everything's starting to shift into pregnancy mode, so everything just is continually aching. And of course she felt a lot of those aches and cramps when she was going through the miscarriage process, and so that's worrisome. A successful pregnancy, baby growing, causes cramps, and miscarriage causes cramps. It's like, we don't know what to make of most of these pregnancy signs, if it's good or if it's bad. And so we're sitting there like, oh, we hope everything's okay. And, we're going to continue to work with doctors. We've got doctor's appointments set up to make sure that everything goes well. But yeah, it's as happy as it is, we're kind of worried and crossing our fingers of please let this pregnancy work out. So we'll see what happens. But fortunately, no bleeding as of yet. We're happy about that. And I think as long as that trend continues, I don't think we'll have anything to worry about too much. She didn't even have implantation bleeding. Anyway, that should be all for week 7. I hope to see you again next week. But thank you once again for joining in with these videos. I look forward to continuing to talk about this. Stay awesome, everyone.